friends, and welcome to Costuming in Color. This is a YouTube show dedicated to showcasing amazing costumers of color and people that support them. I'm Gigi, a history buff, dabbleist, and historical costumer.
And I'm Noelle, a costumer who likes to play both sides of the historical and cosplay world. Today, we are interviewing AJ of Confused Kitty Sewing. Welcome to the show, AJ.
Hi, thanks for having me.
But first, some house rules. The first rule of costuming in color is that you tell everyone about costuming in color.
Yeah, so this way, even if you don't have people of color in your local group, you can get to know ones in the global community.
The second rule is that kindness matters. Aside from that, there are no rules. So let's get into it. So AJ, where are you from and do you still live there?
I am originally from Maryland. I grew up outside DC. I do not live there now. I live in the San Francisco Bay Area. Like I'm within stalking distance of Noelle, except I'm too lazy to stalk anybody. And my family is ethnically Taiwanese Chinese.
Awesome. What is your favorite thing about where we live?
The weather. I don't miss shoveling the snow at all. I also love how diverse it is where we live. When I was growing up, there weren't a lot of Asians where I grew up, and like doing cultural activities was really hard, like finding Chinese dance teachers. Here where I live now, I can name like 5 different dance studios that I can take classes at, and I've even found a Chinese opera teacher out here, which is crazy. It's really hard to find Chinese opera teachers.
Do you sing Chinese opera?
Not well, but I do.
I am.
Or I used to. I'm Chinese opera trained, yeah.
Wow, that's so cool. Like every time I talk to you, something more awesome comes out.
Tell us about your IG handle. What is it and why did you choose it?
I am Confused Kitty Sewing. For the longest time, I was AJ Meow, and then my site was confused-kitty.com. And then I guess last year or maybe a year before, I decided I should try to consolidate and make them all match. But no surprise, every version of Confused Kitty was taken. So I just tagged sewing on the ends, and that's what I'm doing. And my sewing is often very confused, so it seemed to work.
You do the most beautiful embroidery though. Like, oh man, that stuff you've been working on recently with like all the swirly stuff, like it's so beautiful. Like, I'm in awe.
But the machine is doing it.
Yeah, but you program the machine, like that's pretty awesome. Yeah. What is the costuming scene like where you live?
It is very active. There seems like, well, when the plague isn't happening, seems like stuff is going on every weekend. I don't go to a lot of it because I'm a little hard to pry out of the house, but there's a lot of stuff going on, like both historical and anime and cosplay.
Yeah, whatever you want, we got it. This is like costuming mecca. The Bay Area is pretty wild with it.
Yeah, I'm very jealous of that. Very jealous of both of you being so close to a bunch of different costuming options.
Right here next to me, I have a guest room.
So cosplay, historical, or both? Just one word.
Since you do historical, what time periods or places are your favorite?
For Chinese clothing, my favorite is Tang Dynasty. I love the colors and the style, different styles from that era. And then for European Western clothing, I like late 18th century and late Victorian.
Since you also do cosplay, what types of characters do you gravitate toward?
Usually the support or background characters that probably don't say a whole lot. Bonus points if they are characters that are androgynous or male, and it's even better if they're wearing a mask.
How did you start in costuming?
I've been sewing my whole life. My mom used to make all my Chinese dance costumes. So I learned to sew pretty young, but I didn't costume until after college when I started sewing for Halloween. One year I got super obsessive into making my costume, like that kind of thing. I love that kind of thing where like you just do all the tiny little details like from the original costume. And I had so much fun making it. I went online to like look for, I guess, costuming groups or other people who love costuming. And I discovered cosplay and I realized I could do this year round. I was like, what? Sign me up. And that was that. For historical, my best friend who I met through cosplay, she's a historical costumer too. So it was kind of inevitable.
What keeps you in the community?
Definitely the people. I love the people. I met my best friends through it. And I meet more cool people like all the time. Last year's been, I mean, pandemic aside, it's been great because I've gotten to talk to a lot of people that I don't think I would have normally talked to.
What would you like to see improve in the costuming community?
I feel like the community, and this goes for both the historical and cosplay communities, needs to understand that racism is actually a worldwide problem. I know a lot of the community outside the US thinks it's just an American problem and that they don't have to address it. And yeah, it's a huge American problem, which, we're still addressing, but it is also a problem everywhere else too. Like the fact that we have to keep having discussions about why blackface is not okay when you're doing a cosplay, about how, just because we might or might not have been at a historical event, debatable, doesn't mean that, we can't participate in reenactments. I think you can't fix something if you don't acknowledge that it's a problem. And I think people need to start realizing that racism is a global problem. It's everywhere, and that includes our costuming community. And the first step to fixing a problem is admitting you have a problem.
Thank you for saying that. I have faced that myself, being told, you can't participate in this particular reenactment in Europe because people like you would not have been there and you'll ruin our authenticity. So I think it's something that's true. It's not just an American problem. So let's move on to a little bit lighter subject. What is your favorite completed project?
This one is hard for me. Like, do you mean like my favorite build or my favorite costume to wear? Because my favorite build is not going to be something that I can wear for very long.
Okay, wait, so since I'm not, that sounds like a cosplay term. So what is a build versus
a build is like usually more toward armor or something that's like a little more not just sewing. So my favorite build would be the Bride from the 5 Star Stories, because I'm really proud of the engineering and the architecture that I had to put into making it work. But I can't wear it for that long because the headdress is super, super heavy. I think my favorite costume to wear is Drusilla from Cinderella because she's super comfy and she's super fun to wear. Like you can be like so ridiculous in it and people love seeing her.
Those are so cute. I use the term builds when I do Victorian dresses because there is structure involved and there is structural integrity that you have to maintain in those costumes. So I think it is generally a cosplay term, but I think it's bleeding into historical as we move along. What is the silliest thing that's ever happened during an event?
Okay. So back when Marcus, he's my husband, and I started dating, he told me he wanted to cosplay something. And I was like, sure, you pick the costumes and I'll make them. So Bleach was really big at the time. So he picked Grimjaw, which is like this demon type like character. It's topless. This is okay. It has just a jacket and it's bare chested. And then we brought along his best friend Ben, who I also dressed up. So Bleach is like it's a shonen manga. It's martial arts. This is relevant later on. So I take them to Fanaway, which is our local anime con, and we're walking down the hallways, and then these girls spot Marcus, and they start like freaking out, like they start fangirling, they start squealing, and they start freaking out, and then they come running up to him. And I'm sure they didn't mean to do anything, but sometimes you get really overexcited. And he's never experienced this. And he was just like, and he starts like freaking out and he runs around me and he starts hiding behind me. And I'm like trying not to die laughing because it was just like, you don't even think about it because it's just so normal at an anime con, right? And so that happens. And then we're walking along and maybe not like 30 seconds later, some guy comes up to Ben and starts, it's a martial arts comic, starts waving his arms at Ben like he's doing martial arts. Well, Ben is actually a martial artist and he just goes into this automatic defensive mode and grabs this poor idiot and flips him into a chokehold. And I'm just like, oh my God, Ben, you have to let him go. You can't do this. So don't run up to people and wave at them because they might actually know what they're doing. Yeah.
Reflexes are a thing.
Do you have maybe a sentimental or nostalgic costuming memory to share?
I'm going to go with going to Versailles in 2019. We went to Les Fêtes Galantes which is a historical costume event at Versailles in the Hall of Mirrors. We left my larva with my parents. They came out and watched them for 2 weeks. And Marcus and I went to France with a bunch of my friends, people I went with, these ladies. I've been cosplaying with them since like 2004. So it was really cool to go on this trip with them. And it was amazing to wander around Paris with them. And then we got to dress up in like dresses that we made and walk down the Hall of Mirrors. And it's like a once in a lifetime experience. Not cheap, obviously, but if you get a chance to do it, I would highly recommend it.
What costuming groups or orgs are you in?
I am in the GBACG, which is the Greater Bay Area Costuming Guild. I am on the board this year as the webmaster, so like super involved. I am also in the 501st as a stormtrooper. And if I had $1 for every time someone pulled that "aren't you a little short" line, I'd be so rich. I am a little short. I am also in HCC Cosplay, which is just the name for a group of those friends I was talking about. Like, we needed a name when we were competing together, and that was just the name we picked.
This is the point in the conversation in which I'm going to totally embarrass AJ by saying, if it weren't for those girls, I wouldn't be costuming, because I went to costume college my very first time, and I was in a couple of their classes. One of them was resin casting, and they also did a class on hats and also one on wigs, and I took all of them. And that made costume college go from somehow being this strange historical, really sort of like nitpicky place to being this like open world of possibilities. And the way that they described what they were doing in those different panels changed costuming in my mind for me. So like, I credit Judy and AJ for like making it so that I want to costume. And I still think about that a lot. Like, it's moderately embarrassing, but it's true.
Do you have any conventions or events that you'd recommend to others?
I love small local cons because they're great for kids. My favorite one to take my larva to is the Santa Clara Library Con. It's just this little con that they have at the local library, but they have really great crafts for the kids, and my kids love it. Dickens Fair is my favorite local historical event, just because it's like Ren Fair but comfy.
Yeah,
it's indoor, and like you're not overheating in the sun, in California sun. And the food is really, really good. I used to wear a corset to it, and then I realized I couldn't eat my way across Dickens Fair, so now I have a maid costume, so I could just eat the whole time I'm there. And then obviously I would recommend Costume College because I love to take classes, and it's also kind of a girls' weekend away for me and my friends.
Who's your costume crush?
So many. I'm just gonna do maybe one from historical and one from cosplay. So for historical, it is, hopefully I get her name right, Maria from, I think the J is pronounced with a Y. Maria from Before the Automobile. Just like everything she makes is like so clean and so well fitted, and I'm like too intimidated to talk to her. But she's really cool from what I hear. And then for cosplayers, I love Cutie Pie Sensei. She's got amazing costumes, and her Shuri as Black Panther is just to die for.
She also has an amazing Wonder Woman. Like, I'm like, wow.
What is your entertainment routine? Like, do you have a song playlist or a show list for when you sew or craft?
I have to watch stuff that I've already watched a bunch of, or just nothing gets done. I watch a stupid amount of the Great British Baking Show. And also the Great British Sewing Bee, which is a little harder to find, but it's like the same format. It's great. And then, you know, action movies that I've watched a lot of, and occasionally Chinese dramas.
Who inspires you?
All the customers who share their information. It's so amazing to see all the resources that are available out there and people putting them out. It takes a lot of work, but it's like makes it so accessible to everybody and anybody who wants to learn. I know there are downsides to being on social media like this, but that's definitely one of the pluses.
Who or what are you grateful for?
Other than my awesome friends, my husband Marcus. He's so supportive. Like, you know, he lets me take up 90% of the garage and 60% of the house with all my costuming crap. He recently put in a shelf in the garage for me because I was out of space. You know, he puts up with my inability to deal with deadlines, so I'm always cramming at the end and I get really crabby, and he puts up with that. He looks after the kids when I have to cram. He chips in when he can. Like my Sergeant Calhoun armor, he did like half of it for me. And he's like a fantastic bag handler. I'm gonna use the proper term here. Like bag handler, and like he's great at carrying stuff around and dealing with like all the stuff that goes with going to a con when your person in the costume can't move or do anything. And he's my biggest cheerleader. So he takes out like his phone and shows photos of my costumes to people all the time. It's a little embarrassing, but it's really sweet. And I'm really lucky.
That's really great. Like, not everybody has a supportive partner for this, so that's really great. What is your favorite inspirational quote and who is it by?
Um, okay, it's debatable how inspirational this is, but my favorite quote is "Pearls are just congealed oyster spit," which apparently was said by Margaret Atwood. And I'm sure you could think of some deeper meaning, but basically, that's all they are, really. They look great.
If you could give new costumers one piece of advice, what would it be?
Try to figure out what you enjoy and what makes you happy about the hobby and concentrate on that. If you can concentrate your efforts, time, money on the parts you enjoy, you'll have more fun. And don't let someone dictate how you have fun, right? Different things for different people.
If you have a closing message on inclusion or equity that you would like to send out, we would like to make a space for that.
Allyship matters. So I wanted to say thank you to all the people and allies who show up for us, for the BIPOC. It matters that you do. It helps to know that you have our back, and it makes a huge difference. So don't think that it doesn't, because I know it's rough to sometimes to be an ally, but I super appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, AJ. It was lovely to get to know you a little bit better today. Thank you also to our viewers for joining us today. We will leave a list of AJ's information below for you to follow her on all of her platforms.
Please do give this video a thumbs up if you liked it and subscribe if you haven't. If you have a costumer of color that you think we should interview, please use the form that we insert down below for you. Give us ideas on who you'd like to see interviewed on this show. Make sure to leave a little love for AJ in the comments, and we'll see you next time. Bye, guys.
Thanks.